Today in Studying Anatomy, we will be examining brain waves and sleep cycles. This project was done by Morgan Howard. We will first look at the types of brain waves. To begin, we have alpha waves. These are when the person is awake yet relaxed. You can tell which ones are alpha waves because they are consistent and short. We then have beta waves. This is when a person is awake and alert. There are instances of higher peaks in the waves. We next have theta waves. These are common in children. They are somewhat abnormal, but they also have instances of consistency. Finally, we have delta waves. These are when an individual is in a deep sleep. These are long and also peaked. We determine what waves are happening by an EEG. This is when an individual has leads set to their head and at different points to measure brain waves. Sometimes this is used to diagnose epilepsy or other neurological impairments. It's a way that we can study the brain waves and see what's happening in an individual's brain. Consciousness. What even is this? Well, consciousness is not linear, and it's on a continuum that grades behavior in response to stimuli. What is a stimuli, you may ask? That's something that causes a psychological response. Here we have a diagram of an individual reacting to a stimuli. You can see that the individual is looking at the light. As the light's turned on, it is perceived by the individual through their rods and cones in their eyes, travels through the optic nerve, and creates a psychological response within the brain that lets the individual know and perceive this stimuli. We will examine sleep and wake cycles. Sleep cycles occur throughout the evening, and an individual travels through different periods of sleep cycles. To start, we have the REM cycle. This is when skeletal muscles, with the exception of ocular and diaphragm muscles, are actively inhibited. This is also the stage in which dreaming occurs. We next have the NREM cycle 1. This is when relaxation begins and the EEG still shows alpha waves. This is an instance where arousal is still easy. We next have the NREM 2, which is denoted by irregularities within the EEG called sleep spindles. This is when a person is traveling into a deeper sleep. In this stage, arousal is more difficult. NREM 3 is when sleep deepens even more. Theta and delta waves begin to appear, and vital signs begin to decrease. This is denoted by more distinct and longer waves. Finally, we have NREM 4. This is denoted by predominantly delta waves. Arousal is extremely difficult, and in this stage, you would see instances such as bedwetting, night terrors, and sleepwalking. As you can see, an individual travels through periods of these sleep cycles. Within this diagram, you can see an individual travels down and up through the sleep cycles dependent on the hours. This is what an average person's sleep cycle would look like. Now, how can we remember all of this? It's simple. I've come up with a few tips and tricks. For brainwaves, all you need to do is remember this sentence. Alan always rations bread and apples too. Carefully, does dudes super. Now this sentence doesn't seem to make sense, I know, but it's a good way to remember the different brainwaves. A, alpha, A, awake, and then R, relaxed. We next moved on to beta waves. Beta, A, awake, A, alert. Then we have our theta waves. T, theta, C, children. And finally our delta waves. D, delta, D, deep, and D, sleep. Finally, we have our sleep cycles. This is pretty simple. So if you think of the word dream, you can see that it has REM already in there. So REM sleep equals dreaming. Then we can look at NREM stages, 1 being the most awake and 4 being the least awake. Thank you for following this presentation. I hope I taught you something.